Thanks for joining us today on this discussion on enabling sociability through design, specifically focusing on Lions View. I'm Dana, I'm the Community Development Coordinator at Brightside, and with me today is Natalia. Natalia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Natalia Izumazano. I'm the real estate project manager. Can you guys see my screen? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll let Dana start the presentation then.
Thank you. Awesome. So let's get on to the next slide. Great, thanks. So as some of you may know, some of you may not, we're Brightside. We're one of Vancouver's biggest and longest standing affordable housing providers. And really our vision is really to help create more affordable housing stock in Vancouver and ultimately make living in Vancouver and housing in Vancouver more accessible to folks of all income levels, while really focusing on community development and building strong, resilient communities. As a note, we also provide specifically independent living housing to our residents. Next slide, please. So you can see here, this is the map of our buildings. You can see our entire portfolio. It's spread across Vancouver. All of our buildings are in Vancouver. We have 26 buildings with 4 currently under redevelopment. Most of our buildings are older buildings built in the 60s and 70s, wood frame buildings and walk-ups as well. And some of the buildings have amenity spaces, but not all do. Next slide, thank you. So this gives you kind of an overview of some of the demographic information we have about our residents. But our main demographic really is seniors, making up about 70% of our portfolio. But additionally, we also house folks living with disabilities and families as well. But at Brightside, we know that our residents are vulnerable and most live in an intersection of many daily and ongoing challenges. And so what we try to do each year is we try to survey our residents to understand not only who we're housing, but what the main challenges and needs of our residents are, and the struggles they may face on an ongoing basis. And then this data in turn informs a lot of our community-based work. So over the past few years, we've shifted to focus more on community-based collaborations with service providers, programming providers, and also have focused and created a community development and resident support department. And this department focuses and assists on building community, as well as supporting residents in connecting them to services and things that they might need. Next slide, please. Awesome. So here you can see the social determinants of health. And so this is important for us to focus on it just quickly because it's important to explain the nuance around support. As an independent living housing provider, we're not able to provide direct medical or social supports. But we do know that folks that live in communities where they feel safe and supported and connected allows them to live healthier lives and combat social isolation and loneliness. And these are two challenges that we know plague a lot of our residents that are older adults. And therefore, we try to focus on being able to provide supports where we're able to. So kind of opening our door to supports and programming, whether it's bringing in next-gen hearing clinics, whether it's bringing in neighborhood houses to perform different programming, or different pharmacies coming in and doing health workshops, things like that. So we kind of open our door to these services and don't provide them directly. So really, Brightside doesn't just see itself as a landlord and tries to foster a communal environment and create opportunities for folks to be able to safely age in place. And so while we do take up the space of affordable housing, we also take up the space of these arrows, connecting folks to these services, whether it's different support services that they might need to be able to continue to live independently. Next slide, please. So community development, what we really focus on are 4 key things. The first being obviously partnerships, as I've mentioned, bringing in collaborating with others and bringing in providers to access the space and to provide services for our residents. The second is providing resources to residents, so connecting them to external organizations that might be able to assist them with their challenges. The third is research, so participating in initiatives with different organizations and universities. And then the fourth is putting together community events, whether it's annual community events that we have across our portfolio, or whether it's individualized events that are per building and building specific. Now, sadly, not all of our properties have amenity spaces that can allow for these activities, but Lions View is a property that does have these spaces, and we are able to activate it quite a bit because of these spaces. And we try to model a lot of our properties around this kind of vision of activating community and having space for that. So now we can take a look at Lions View. So this is Lions View. It is made up of 3 buildings, 126 units. It's 119 one-bedrooms, 7 two-bedrooms, 3 amenity rooms. Individually in each building there's one large event space, 1 courtyard. It houses only seniors, and it was built between 93 and 95. And so here you can kind of see an overview of the property. As you can see, there's 3 buildings that face each other and share a communal courtyard. And now we can take a look at how the property functions to serve community. So as you can see, the red boxes signify amenity spaces. So each building has an amenity space, a small amenity space, as well as there's 1 large amenity space that also has external access to other folks from other buildings that they can access it as well. And all of the amenity spaces include kitchens or kitchenettes, bathrooms, as well as Wi-Fi, and one of them also has a business center. But the spaces are really built to allow for community partners to come in and provide services, as well as for residents to be able to access and build their own programming. As also another feature is accessibility. It has there's a big portion of accessibility that we try to implement here. So you can see we have large connecting paths between the 3 buildings. At the top of the property, you can see a ramp, as well as a bench that you can't really see, but there's a bench there to allow for folks to be able to rest, wait for whoever might be picking them up and whatever services they're going on to, or whatever they might be doing. And so really building community is also about making the infrastructure for the community accessible. And finally, we have this big outdoor communal area that includes community gardens. So as you can see in the pictures, the 2 on the right, the top right is the community gardens, and the one below it is from one of our barbecue events. And you can see the top left picture is in one of our amenity spaces. We do an annual health fair, and folks there did chair yoga. So really, what we try to focus on is how spaces can accommodate the needs of our community, and that is the most important part. And that's what we try to focus on for our redevelopments as well. And now I will pass it on to Natalia to discuss some of our upcoming developments.
Thank you, Dana. So I'll be quick there. The lines of design that Dana just presented really helped with the community development activities that we wanted to have in the building. So because it has so much like common space and bigger amenity room that allows for like all this variety of events to be done and programs, we wanted to kind of use a lot of the design elements to bring to our redevelopment building. So we actually have right now 4 buildings being redeveloped out of our 26 buildings. But I will show you one example so you can see what aspects of design that we are implementing in our new building. And the one that we're going to talk about is the East 12 project in Vancouver. It's a seniors building as well as Lions View, so it's a little bit more comparable. So the East 12 project is being redeveloped. It consists of replacing 2 3-story wood frame mock-up buildings that are beside each other and replaced with 2 6-story buildings. And they will also have elevator. Right now, we don't have elevators in our buildings, which makes it a little bit inaccessible for some residents. And we increased the number of units in the site from 57 to 157 units. The previous buildings did not have an amenity room inside the building, so obviously we are making sure that we're gonna include in each building bigger amenity rooms. So here's just the plan of our new building. As intentional part of the design was to provide amenity room in two buildings, so we are highlighting here for you guys to see the two big amenity rooms facing each other. And it kind of creates the kind of courtyard style that we see in the Lions View as well. In each of the amenity rooms, you would find a big kitchen, space for people to be able to cook and share meals. You have a business center where it's just a spot where you have like internet and access to a computer. You also have access to a TV area. So in this building, it's here, and in this building is here. And you also, we also in this building, because we want to make sure people have more spontaneous interactions. We put the laundry room really close to the amenity room. So it's the laundry room is here and also here in this building, and have access to the corridor, but also a direct access to the community amenity room. So if people are doing their laundry, they can actually go and sit there and wait for the laundry, or instead of going back to their unit. So in a way, it's making really convenient spaces for people to feel like interacting. We also added community gardens spread out along this section here. Community garden is something that we really value and really want to keep in our buildings. It's a program that most of our residents really enjoy. But where the design is, this corridor here was a little bit unintentional, because we have a Metro Vancouver sewage pipe that runs here. So that's why this corridor has to be kept. So if they needed to ever access this site, they could. The sewage pipe is actually inactive, being 100 years, but they don't want us to build anything on top of it that's permanent. So that's why it was like a good spot and opportunity for us to put community gardens on top of this land and create this kind of like green path. The other thing I want to mention quickly too, everything that we are doing is based on our the community programs we want to present and have to the residents. But also, not everybody wants to be so active, engaged. So we also created for all the units, we have balconies. So people can actually step outside from their balconies and have a little bit of more passive interaction with their environment and neighbors. So even if it's just like them stepping out and seeing someone they know and just wave, it's just already like a way for them to feel a little bit more sense of belonging and see what's going on around the building.
Great. I'm just playing timekeeper here, and maybe I'll just invite you to share any last comments, and then we'll open up the floor.
Sounds good. Yeah. So I think the other thing that I was just mentioned, it was just some of a like trade-off of challenge that sometimes we face on making a building that's accessible for the residents and each other from those buildings. Is also making sure it's like a privacy versus public access and security balance. So every time that we are looking at those designs, also making sure it's secure but accessible enough that people feel sense of that community. So anyways, I'll stop here because I know we want to leave space for questions. So yeah, I will move to discussions and questions, and maybe we can address some of the comments.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Natalia and Dana. That was great to hear both about Lions View and your new developments coming up. And maybe I'll just invite you to close your screen so we can see everyone and we can see you. And if there are other pieces you wanted to share, you can sneak them in with people's questions. So Charito, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. It was super interesting. And I just was wondering, like you mentioned that some
I think we lost Charito.
Buildings have common areas. Oh,
sorry, you just cut off for a second. Can you ask your question again?
So sorry, I'll try to speak fast so it doesn't do that again. I'm just wondering, have you noticed any difference in terms of the residents, like social interactions or health or just anything that might stand in mind between the ones that have shared common areas and the ones that don't?
Great question.
Yeah, I do think that it's hard to say because even in buildings that don't have amenity spaces, it really depends on the community. Really, at the end of the day, there's some places that don't have amenity spaces and they create them for themselves, and they invite each other into their own suites and that sort of stuff. I do think it helps in just providing a space for folks to feel comfortable. I know that folks that do have a space, they get together for their games nights and things like that. So it does create at least an opportunity for folks to engage if they so choose. Um, but we do find that there are still communities where folks still gather in their suites. I think it really depends on the building and the makeup of the folks. But I do think that the spaces definitely assist in providing that opportunity for folks to be able to start to build off of. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And maybe just for those, I know sometimes we have other things going on in the background, but just invite those who want to turn your video on. It's nice to have a sense of who's in the room here with us and be in conversation together. And I see Anur has sent me a question to pass on saying, there's evidence that seniors' independent living residences, particularly those serving frail and low-income seniors, are often poorly prepared for emergency situations such as COVID. And recent heat waves. And has attention been given in any of the new or existing buildings around developing and operationalizing emergency preparedness plans or procedures with your residents?
Interesting. So for the new buildings, I know it's something that operations is working on. I'm not sure if it's going to be individualized per building, but that's interesting. I think we can bring this up as an opportunity to do. But yeah, I don't think we have necessarily thought about it. But it's more like operations in general, because we have 26 buildings, so it would be a plan to have in all of the buildings. Yeah.
And Anur, I think as part of the Hey Neighbor Collective, one of the models we're testing is the Connect and Prepare program, which is looking at how to build social connections through emergency preparedness. And we are exploring that with different partners in the collective. So that who knows, maybe that was something that will come to Brightside as well. Great, so other questions or comments from folks, or I don't see any. Natalia or Dana, anything you didn't get a chance to share that you wanted to?
We can discuss some of the challenges we do face in terms of connecting folks. So I think a big challenge is obviously social isolation. So especially with seniors, which make up our main demographic, many of them, there might be programming happening in their building. And they're severely or very much socially isolated, but they don't feel like the space is for them to share, or that it's for them to they don't necessarily feel comfortable in it because they need to have a sense of belonging. They need to know somebody there. They need to feel kind of safe. So there needs to be a bit of an environment that is welcoming before they can really step into that space. And so I think that's one of the big challenges is that sense of belonging, and also that needs vary. So even if you do bring programming into a building, it might only apply for 5 to 10 people, and others might not be as interested or need that even. So I think those are a lot of the community-based challenges.
Thanks for sharing that, Dana. And I'm hearing in this example of Brightside, and also the previous conversation that we're in, this intersection of both design elements and programming elements, and the two needing to go hand in hand, that one in and of itself isn't enough. That's just a theme that I'm picking up on across the conversations. Charito, I think you had another question or comment?
I do, if there's time. I was just building on what you just said, Dan. I was wondering about how you identified how the spaces would be designed or redesigned. Like, how do you engage the residents themselves to figure out, considering how you answered my previous question about it depends. Like, it depends on the community and individual health needs. So how do you engage those folks to figure out what their space is going to look like?
So I can give a bit of background on currently, but maybe Natalia can give a bit of background on how we did that for future. So a big piece for us is our annual survey. And so in that survey, it identifies a lot of the big challenges our residents are facing. And so through that, we know that, for example, if food security is a big challenge, that's something we're going to focus on more. And we're going to try to bring in more food supports for residents. As well as things we hear from the community. So things like we collaborate with Next Gen Hearing because we know that that is a big challenge that many seniors face. And so it comes a bit from the community that we serve, as well as the service providers that support the community we serve. And so we have to basically create spaces that are accessible to them and to these needs, like the amenity spaces. And even technology, a big thing is seniors, are intimidated often by technology, and so we're trying to create spaces where they can access technology and feel comfortable around it. So creating tech literacy courses and things like that to help folks, especially through times of need like COVID, where tech literacy is really proven to be key. So that's kind of how we get a bit of the information, both from our residents and the communities that support them.
Maybe just to complement what Dana said, a lot of the things we learn is from either through survey or survey the residents. So we have an idea of what programs are actually working and what the needs are. So some of the programs comes from identifying some needs and see if that program will actually help with that need, so it becomes a different service. And yes, there's usually, if there's something we want to implement, there's also focus groups after, right before we even implement something, right? Then whenever we did the business centers, whenever we are implementing them, we just actually have a chat with each resident, with a group of residents, understanding if that would work and how it would work and what they would like to see. So we do consult with them to create those programs.
That's great. And this, you may have just answered this, but I was curious, particularly with the new developments, how will you measure success as you move forward, particularly around the dimension of social connectedness and well-being?
I'm like, that's something that we definitely want to see how that we can work on, but we don't have right now something in place, but it's something we're probably going to work on, is try to find what are the design aspects that's working for us. Right now it's based on our experience and the needs of what the programs that we have right now, and understanding what the residents have been mentioned to us. So for example, where we put the laundry room, we got a lot of feedback from residents that they didn't like the laundry room before because it was dark in the basement. And so maybe putting a laundry room in the ground floor with a window close to the main room, so they feel even safer, because you are locked in a room downstairs that might be even darker. So we're just trying to make it the spaces that they mentioned to us and put into a better place that will allow for them to feel comfortable. So yeah, the quality of life and how people feel comfortable in the space is definitely priority. But yeah, to answer your question shortly, we are still going to work on how we're going to evaluate our new projects and how successful each element will be.
That's great. That's exciting. Yeah. I know we're almost at time, 1 minute. I guess one last question, and then we'll probably get zipped back partway through. But if you had a magic wand for Lions View, which is an existing building, are there any dimensions of the design that you would change? Just out of curiosity.
What I would change? I'll make the meeting room bigger. What about you then?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know. It's kind of our star building. So it's hard to say because we try to model everything around it.
Okay, that's great. That's great to know what's working too. Yeah. Well, I just want to, I know we're going to get whisked away, so I just want to thank both Dana and Natalia. It was great to hear. It's really interesting to see how you're learning from what really is working in one of your sites and then carrying that forward with these new developments, and that you have the opportunity to do that, and lots for the rest of us to learn. I'm sitting with the question that you raised around, you know, how do you create that environment where people feel like they belong, so they will engage in some of these community activities?